Hello, everybody. I hope you all had a beautiful day. It was way too warm here in Tooele Valley in Utah for sure. Oops, and we're on the wrong screen there. All right, here we are in Collectively Rewilding. This is more of a podcast style class anyway, so the screen doesn't completely matter, and yet still, we probably don't want to sit and look at a Zoom box. So for our first little reading today, let's jump into our collection of micros and sprouts. I checked it out, and I think this is a great article to read right now. The Pros and Cons of Growing Your Own Sprouts by Gardenary and Nicole Burke. And in this article, just basically covers what we're going to read, so we're going to go ahead and just read it. Interested in growing your own sprouts? Sprouts are the very first growth of a vegetable. They look like nothing more than little pieces of vegetable confetti, but they're packed with nutrients and boast all the flavor of the mature counterparts. You can grow tons of different plants as sprouts to suit your taste. These tiny plants have been part of Chinese cuisine for thousands of years, but they're just now really taking off in other parts of the world, here included. And I, for one, am so ready for the sprouts awakening. 2 seconds. Sprouts are so good for us. They're easy to grow, and they make every meal feel gourmet. Here are the things I think everyone should know about sprouts, including the 5 major pros, and then the 4 considerations to keep in mind before you soak your first batch of seeds. The pros of growing your own sprouts. Sprouts require very little space or setup. You do not need a garden to grow your own sprouts, not so much as a single pot on an apartment balcony. Actually, you don't even need to leave your kitchen to plant and tend your sprouts. You can grow a weekly supply of sprouts if you have a space the size of a dinner plate on your countertop. All you need is a container that allows you to rinse your seeds and then drain them fully again and again during their growing process. You can buy a designated seed sprouter or sprouting tray, or you can just use supplies you already have in your kitchen, like a bowl and a strainer. That's really all you need. No building raised beds or dragging heavy bags of soil to your door. I wish I had known about this simple form of indoor gardening when I was living in tiny apartments and row houses, dreaming of having a huge yard one day so I could finally grow a little bit of my own food. Sprouts are easy to grow. Just as you don't have to have a garden to grow sprouts, you also don't need to have any gardening experience. People who've killed every other plant they've ever tried to grow can harvest bowls and bowls of their own sprouts with very little effort. I'm not exaggerating when I say that growing your own sprouts is as easy as shampooing your hair. Okay, my hair is a pain to shampoo. I'm just going to say that right now, but we're going to assume her hair is easier than mine to shampoo. After giving your sprouts an initial soak, you just rinse them a couple times a day and spread them out over their draining tray. Rinse, repeat. That's all, folks. Sprouts are ready in as little as 5 days. When I tell people I like fast food, I am, of course, referring to sprouts. Imagine waking up one day to discover your baby grew so much that they burst through their onesie overnight. That's how fast these plants grow. They're doubling, if not quadrupling their size every day. And because we're harvesting them before they grow their first set of true leaves, that means they're ready in just 5 to 7 days. No committing to months of waiting for your first harvest. I mean, if you've been looking for a quick win in the garden, you've just found it. Sprouts can be grown year-round. Sprouts are grown indoors, so they're not affected by the weather outside. In other words, sprouts are in season every single month of the year, no matter where you live. There could be a blizzard outside. There could be record-breaking temps. Everything green outside could be covered in snow or shriveled up from drought. It doesn't matter. Your sprouts are doing their thing inside. It was actually in the middle of my first winter in Chicago that I discovered the simple joys of growing sprouts and microgreens indoors. If you miss garden fresh flavors during long, brutal winters or summers, sprouts will be your salvation. Sprouts are packed with nutrients. There are as many nutrients in a teaspoon of sprouts as there are in an entire basket of fruits and vegetables. That's because seeds are filled with all kinds of vitamins, minerals, and enzymes, and the sprouting process basically unlocks those nutrients. Consuming these tiny plants before they've had a chance to grow means there's no time for all that nutrition to spread out to leaves and stems and fruits. Basically, we get to enjoy all the good stuff in the most concentrated form nature offers. The exact nutrients you'll get from sprouts depend on the type of sprout you're eating. Most sprouts contain vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin K, folate, and minerals like iron, potassium, and magnesium. There's also more fiber in sprouts than in their mature vegetable counterparts. Excuse me, did I say that correctly? There's also more fiber in sprouts than in their mature vegetable counterparts. I did not know that. Thanks to just that last part there, right? That there's more fiber. I knew it had the extra nutrients that's coming right out of that seed into what will be the mature plant, that it has to sustain itself along with the ability to, once it gets its first set of leaves, get some from chlorophyll from the sun and starting to get some from the roots. It's still primarily relying on what was in essentially its embryo when you think of like a chicken egg. And that embryo is still the powerhouse of that plant. So instead of it powering the growth of all of those structures like Nicole Burke was talking about, you have it in that little bitty piece of what the plant would become, that little sprout, that little microgreen. Microgreens have put more of that into themselves, but it's still pretty much all right there for you to get, right? Okay, so yeah, that's really interesting that it also has more fiber. Thanks to all these nutrients, sprouts provide tons of potential health benefits, including controlling blood sugar levels in people with diabetes, improving digestion, lowering cholesterol, and boosting immune function. The different antioxidants found in sprout varieties combat oxidative stress and help us, this is huge for me, avoid chronic disease and cancer. Scientists are even exploring sprouts as a way to treat and prevent malnutrition around the world. What if the answer to so many of our health problems is inside a jar? Not a jar of multivitamins from the store, just a little mason jar of homegrown sprouts. The cons of growing your own sprouts. Sprouts need your daily attention while they're growing. If you're the kind of person who forgets to do daily tasks, you might accidentally neglect your sprouts during a pivotal time in their growth. When the days to harvest time are so short, every single day counts. After all, the only thing you're really giving these seeds to get them to grow is water. So if you hold out on the water too long, these seeds will shrivel up and die. Or if you let them sit in too much water for too long, they'll grow mildew or mold instead of tasty leaves. Caring for your sprouts takes just a minute or two in the morning and night. The best way to ensure you're there for your sprouts is to keep them right by your kitchen sink. That way, you make tending them part of your daily routine, like when you're making coffee in the morning and cleaning up after dinner. As long as you step up to your kitchen sink at least twice a day, you'll see them, which means you can keep track of their growth, water when needed, and know when they're ready for harvest. Sprouts spoil quickly. These tiny plants are so delicate they just don't last very long. That's why you don't see sprouts for sale at most grocery stores. It's too difficult for growers to pack and ship sprouts in a way that guarantees they'll still be fresh by the time they get to us. You'll want to enjoy your homegrown sprouts within a couple of days and store them inside the fridge. Before you eat a batch, make sure they don't smell musty or have a slimy appearance. 2 signs they're no longer fresh. Also, if there's any water in the bag and there's color to it at all, that's a real key indicator for me. If there's a little bit of water droplets that aren't typically there, if it's doing really well, it's okay as long as they're clear. Definitely still smell it, but most of the time, if the water droplets are clear, you can still utilize that produce, especially if it's something for like what they're upstairs cooking right now, a dish we call Scrambled Omelets. And it's absolutely perfect for veggies that are right on the edge of being ready to get tossed out. You can go in there, they get cooked in with those eggs, and you'll never even notice. So water droplets, smell, slimy appearance, those are your 3 indicators, all right? And if it has color in the droplets, I don't even smell it. I've consistently utilized this method for almost 20 years, and it worked for years before I just said, okay, this is the way to go. If there's color in the droplets, let's go ahead and put it in the compost bin. Now, thank goodness, right? Certain points of my life, but this has been the longest consistent period that my family and I have ever been able to compost. And we're so grateful. We love composting. It's such a magical act to take things that would have been trash and make wonderful soil out of them. I don't know. We get really excited about it sometimes. Sprouts might be difficult for some people to digest. Remember how I said sprouts contain lots of fiber and are great for our digestive health? Well, turns out there can be too much of a good thing. Most of us are not currently getting enough fiber in our diet. And if we all of a sudden eat a whole bunch of sprouts that have a high concentration of insoluble fiber, which is a good thing, but it can be too much in too large of portions when it's not something your body is used to, right? So these sprouts that have a high concentration of insoluble fiber, we can actually make our gut symptoms worse. Too much fiber can cause things like bloating, gas, and constipation. And that's anything if you just overdo it, even if you're like my family and I, where we eat so many fruits and vegetables. If you eat too many cherries in one sitting, if you eat too many grapes, when I used to eat too many tomatoes in one sitting, and I'd get canker sores all over inside and on my lips because I just loved those fresh garden tomatoes so much I couldn't resist, right? Every summer as a child, at least at one point, I would end up with a mouthful of canker sores from eating tomatoes. And so that's your body telling you, you're eating too much. So always be aware of where you're at. And if you're having tremendous problems, we don't just listen to an article, right? We want to go to our doctor or our nutritionist, or if we see, traditional Chinese medicine, anything that we're doing, we want to talk to somebody if we're at a really hard stage. But for most of us, if we're not too bad off, but we know we don't get enough fiber, you want to start smaller than large with these guys. And that's good to know, right? And again, I didn't realize that they were so much higher in fiber. I can't imagine it. I'll show you guys tomorrow. I keep wanting to go and get the microgreens that I have growing right now. They just exploded, the arugula, right? And the beets finally started coming up. So the beets did take a lot longer to germinate because we're almost ready to harvest the arugula, and the beets are just now peeking up their heads, and they're really yellow. I was kind of surprised. I've only ever just grown beets in the ground, right? So I've had success, but I didn't really, when you're out in the ground, there's so much more going on that you don't notice every stage always as much. But when you're doing something like your sprouts and your microgreens, or when I talked to Wendy about doing that porch garden, when I had them right there and I just sat there and looked at them all day, every day, I got really nitpicky with them. They were like my children much more. And I picked off every dead leaf and noticed everything that was going on and helped them or propped them up or anything that they would need. It was a really, really hot summer. So they needed quite a bit, right? And it was just so much more intense than when I've had huge raised bed gardens and then an in-ground garden that was larger with squash. It was so glorious. We had way too much nitrogen in the soil, so the squash leaves looked tropical. They were so gorgeous. And it didn't matter to the squash plants as much. We still got quite a bit of produce off of those as well as the beets, but a lot of the other plants, because it was so high in nitrogen, the tomatoes, the eggplant, the peppers, they didn't do very well. They were beautiful looking as plants, just way too much foliage, right? And so that's what nitrogen, too much nitrogen, you need nitrogen. You need those leaves to be stable and healthy and very good at taking in sunlight with the chlorophyll. They also take in air and some amount of water as well, right? So you need your leaves to be healthy, absolutely. But too much nitrogen, while it'll make them glorious to behold, will leave you without the fruits of your labor, quite literally, okay? So those are the things that can happen if we intake too much fiber, if we haven't been doing it enough. Now, having said that, a little spoonful of sprouts or microgreens once or twice a day, if you're not in the point where you feel you need to go and see some sort of practitioner before exploring this, would be probably a great way to get that fiber intake more regulated in your body to be aware of it. But I'm talking 1 or 2 little spoonfuls a day. And probably if I really didn't get a lot of fruits and vegetables and whole wheat products, right? With my family, we try to go with the modified paleo that is Wall's protocol for the majority. And we eat a lot less breads and cheeses than we used to. Now, when my husband starts suffering his MS symptoms more strongly, we go more strongly back into the diet, right? And just get rid of the cheeses and breads. That's almost all we have to do because we eat so many fruits and vegetables, and we've always eaten a reasonable amount of meat. And so those kinds of things, these are ways that we can work with our body and do it in increments. We don't want to overload our body, even with good things. We want, if that's not something our body's used to, we need to work our body up to being able to have more. So once you've done, a tablespoon or so of sprouts a day and you're doing fine, then you can increase it 3 or 4 a day. Then once you're doing well, just don't eat it by the handful. That probably wouldn't be good for any of us, no matter how often we do consume these. With them being so high in fiber, just eating handful after handful would probably be bad for really any of us, right? We're not horses. We are supposed to eat varied nutrients, not just all these freshly growing greens chopped right at the ground like some sort of herbivore, right? We're omnivores and we can eat a good amount of fruits and vegetables, but we don't want it to be too much of any one kind. And unknowing to myself, sprouts and microgreens are in that bunch. As always, she says, we're supposed to eat a variety of fiber-rich foods. So that should include a variety of sprouts as well, right? And that's what we're doing over here. Tons of fun. It's going to be really neat to continue to go. The little contained units that my husband was so excited about, and I was too when I started the moss project, right? Remember the peat moss project? That didn't turn out very well. So this, of course, turned out much better, but his little container, it filled with mold. And so it's drying out. We're letting that get through it, and I'll probably just replace the soil entirely, but I haven't had a chance. That should have been what I did yesterday, but we got our garage so much further forward, and that's where we need to be able to build the installs for the potager or formal raised bed garden that we're going to do in the backyard. We have to have a place to build those raised beds, right? So that's where a bunch of my focus has been over this weekend. Not super exciting, not gardening, and yet gardening adjacent, right? That's the hair is up, had things on over the sweatshirt or the sweater to protect it, and out there digging into boxes instead of digging into the soil. All right, and so yes, a variety of sprouts is wonderful as well. And she says, I typically grow at least 3 different types each week. Okay, well, she's more committed and has more time than I do. I like my 2 a week. That's plenty for me, right? And then again, that's just 2 dinner plates worth on some sort of counter somewhere that you can have that going, or in just a little jar, right? That is a very common method of doing it. Putting them in a jar, you just put in about, I don't know, that much. Start rinsing it every day, just drain it, make sure you're not losing any of your seeds, put it back out on the space where you have it set, do it again until they're ready to go. And I think that that would actually be an easier method in all reality than those little seed starters, the sprout starters that Candace and I have, because you have to get those out of those little holes. And it didn't work out very well. I didn't like how it worked. And thinking about it right now as we're talking about it, I think we're going to switch to the jar method. I think that we'll, how shall we say it? We will retire our sprout starter, put that into the giveaway pile for the donations to thrift store, and contain all of our sprouts just in a jar. I do. I think that's a much more simple method. And then I'm going to be able to just dump them out, right? Instead of having to try to like pick them out, it was less than efficient. All right. And so then the last thing that Nicole's saying here is give your body time to adapt to new foods and spread your sprout consumption throughout the day. Definitely. Sprouts present a small risk of contamination. There's a small chance that you can consume some bad bacteria like Listeria, Salmonella, and E. coli along with your sprouts. The problem is the seed itself can be contaminated if bacteria slips in through the little cracks in the seed coat. Instead of leaving the contaminated part behind in the soil, we're putting it in a warm, moist environment next to hundreds of other little plants. Then we eat those plants raw. If you're pregnant, you might consider avoiding sprouts the same way you would soft cheeses and deli meat, or stick to more robust sprouts like bean sprouts, which can be cooked, right? And I think that you can add sprouts and microgreens into things that you're cooking anyway. And we will probably be doing that tonight with our scrambled omelets. At least I will be. I've been trying to convince these kids to let us put it into the meals over and over. And our oldest daughter, she just will not go for it. So she's our least picky child. So I give her credit where credit is due. Okay, we can all reduce our chances of getting sick by purchasing our seeds from reputable growers, following the directions on the package to disinfect seeds before sprouting them, and washing our sprouts thoroughly before eating them. I don't remember reading a single thing about that. Let's just take one right here.
Hey, Sabrina.
Yes.
So, you were talking about the mason jar thing. I found a lady that I've been watching on YouTube, where you can do mason jar and then actually cover them, put them in blackout stage. I put a YouTube in the chat, and also what I'm talking about on what is it? Amazon. So if you want to take a look at that, and it's pretty cool. You might think it's cool. You might try to look at
I
it.
know, I'm trying to not spend any money. Anywhere that I can keep from spending money, I'm all about it. But if you want to put it in,
It's cheap. It's like $20 for two mason jars, and it actually has like a
I
thermal
already
cover.
have mason jars, right?
Well, it's like a kit. So like it has like covers for it to go into dark when you start washing them. It's a process, but you can check it out if you want. It's
I
pretty
didn't do
cool.
anything special for these guys. I just put them on the shelves with the others, 12 hours of light on, 12 hours of light off. They didn't
Yeah.
need anything special. That's why I'm saying, even having bought my little sprout starter, right? It wasn't a super
Mhm.
expensive thing. It was less than 20 bucks. I mean, it's just 3 plastic trays with lids, right? And but in all reality, that jar is going to be an easier way to do it. And we already have mason jars, and we already have the space for it. So I think that going simpler where it actually works is always your best bet, and cheaper. I'm a cheapie. I totally own it. Okay, so this says soak for 4 to 6 hours. This is the 5-part salad mix. Rinse with cold water and place in sprouting tray or jar. I guess because you haven't placed it in the tray or jar yet, that would be your, how did she put it? Disinfect seeds before sprouting them. It's kind of weird. It's kind of a weird way to say something, because disinfecting is usually a chemical process, and obviously we're not going to do that to our seeds. So it's just a weird way to say it, but I'm guessing that soaking 4 to 6 hours and then rinsing with cold water, then you place it in your sprouting tray or jar. That's going to be your disinfecting process. Some of that junk that may have gotten through those seed papers will get soaked out in the water, and then you rinse that out. Then you put them into their container so you didn't bring that along with you. So I'm thinking that that's what she means by a disinfectant process. It's just a really weird way to say it. It's very counterintuitive as how she's using this word. Okay, and then growing your own sprouts instead of buying them means you're in control from day one to ensure you're handling them in a safe manner. Make sure to follow these directions to reduce your chances of fungal issues and contaminants. And so we'll actually go ahead and pull that up, and then she's going to go into a little sales ad. The verdict: is growing sprouts at home worth it? I personally believe that the pros far outweigh the cons for growing our own sprouts. The biggest con is really the risk of encountering a foodborne pathogen, but you face the same risk if you buy sprouts from the store. And I'm going to say that if you're doing it right, you face a far lower risk if you're doing it in your own home. And honestly, we're already and honestly, we're already taking that risk every time we buy things like romaine lettuce, cantaloupe, and even ice cream. I don't know why about ice cream, but anything really that's packaged in these factories can be. I guess that's what she means. I typically eat sprouts raw, and I've never had a problem. I have never had a problem either, guys. Really, I'm like any produce, right? We hear about recalls. It can have that problem, but it's not a huge continuous presence of worry, right? For myself, the incredible health benefits of eating sprouts make the tiny risk more than worth it. Speaking of those health benefits, I really think we could reduce our need for so many different medical services if we were all growing sprouts at home. And we don't have to grow tons of sprouts to reap those benefits. Just a spoonful of sprout seeds a week could do so much good for our bodies. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is the cost of growing your own sprouts. If you start out just using supplies you have at home, then all you'll need to grab is a pack of bulk seeds. And they were, of course, a lot better priced than the little bitty packets that I had already purchased. You can buy a pound of sprouting seeds for less than $20, about the same price as a good multivitamin. This pack will last you several months if you're only growing a tablespoon of sprouts each week. That's exponentially cheaper than buying sprouts from the store, even if you can find them. Lastly, I've found a lot of joy in growing sprouts. You literally get to harvest something you've grown inside your kitchen each week. You could start a new batch every couple of days and have a steady rotation of the most nutrient-dense, flavorful vegetables on the planet. It's pretty incredible. Sprouts FAQs. Do sprouts need light to grow? You don't need any light to grow sprouts, not even artificial light. If you'd like your sprouts to turn a darker green around the time of harvest, however, you can introduce a little light so that they can photosynthesize. This is completely optional. Can sprouts grow into full plants? The seeds for sprouts are the same seeds you would buy to grow a mature plant. The only difference is that seeds labeled for sprouting are often sold in larger quantities since you'll need a lot of them to get a good harvest. If you were to place these seeds in a growing medium and give them time to grow, you could grow a full plant under the right conditions. And so that's how my husband and I look at these big bags, right? The one that you guys already saw here, and these, which are the black oil sunflower. I'm just so excited about that name. An oil, that's a positive thing. And it is backup if we had some major calamity, regional, national, global, whatever. You have these huge bags of seeds to do whatever you need to, whether you need the middle of the winter and you need those fresh greens so that you don't have problems from lack of nutrients, or it's more in the spring, late summertime, and you can plant them in the ground and produce the whole plant, right? So it's really a good investment. How long do sprouts last? Sprouts can be saved in your fridge for up to a week, so you'll enjoy them at their peak flavor and nutritional content as soon as they're ready. The best way to store them is inside a closed container lined with a paper towel. We didn't put a paper towel in with ours, and I could definitely tell we should have. I like to stagger when my different batches of sprouts will be ready throughout the week so that I can enjoy them as fresh as possible. And so if we get really serious about it, we have one every week, right? Or one set every week. But we could do, the whole thing all the time and have them just producing every few days, right? That would be a great way to go about doing it. And then a little bit more about shopping. Are you ready to grow your own sprouts? I'm on a mission to get every single person in the world gardening a little bit in their very own space. And growing sprouts is one of the simplest ways that each of us can become a gardener. Sprouts bring all the magic of gardening indoors, without any of the setup, time commitment, or skills required. Not to mention, you don't have to deal with the pests. My goal this year is to start at least one tray of sprouts every week for the entirety of the year. I hope you'll join me in growing your own fresh, nutritious, and flavor-packed food. So, very good article, I think. And we'll place that here in the gardenary space. Pros and cons of growing your own sprouts. There you guys have that. And now we'll go ahead and jump into Leaves, Roots, and Fruit, again by Nicole Burke. And I'm going to take my video away because it gets heavy reading the book and I probably make really weird faces. So here we go, guys. All right. We are on step 2 in Let's refresh where we are in our minds. We've just done the sprouts and microgreens section, and in that same section, she's going to go to herbs. Sprouts and microgreens are step 1. Now we're at step 2 on our plant ladder, right? Step 2 being herbs. I planted some oregano seeds by the front door. Hopefully, they'll come up. Somehow, my mom always knew exactly what I really needed anytime she came to stay with me. In this case, I just had my second baby, and somewhere in the middle of the sleepless nights, diaper changes, and countless loads of laundry, my mom had stepped outside with a packet of seeds and scattered them in my small front garden. A few weeks later, I sat with my baby boy on the stoop of our townhome, hoping the fresh air would stop the latest crying episode. And that's when I saw them, sprigs of green peeking out of the soil. I'm sure that's a weed, I thought to myself. Weeds, after all, were all I'd successfully grown until then. But still, I reached over, gently rubbing the tiny leaves between my index finger and thumb. It was the smell of my mom's kitchen on spaghetti night. Could this be the oregano she planted? It could be. It could be, and it was. Over the next few weeks, I did nothing to help this oregano plant grow. I gave it no water apart from what fell from the sky, no protection, no fertilizer. All I offered this plant was the tired but expectant eyes of a new mother, and somehow that was all it took. From my stoop, I had a front row seat to the first plant magic I'd finally sat still long enough to observe. One leaf turned into 2, then 10, then 20, then 200, perhaps all the way to 2,000, as the oregano spread and spread in that square foot spot of my front yard. Even though I had no time for garden, I harvested one handful of oregano after another well into fall that year. And would you believe it? The following spring, when my son was walking and the piles of snow cleared, those tiny bright green leaves popped up again, one after the other, appearing up as if to say, "Hey there, you loved us so much last year, we thought you'd enjoy an encore." Each fragrant sprig I cut and tossed onto the spaghetti in my own kitchen offered a subtle hug from my mom any day I needed it. And though I didn't realize it at the time, those tiny cuttings of oregano were my first step to becoming a kitchen gardener. If you're in a season of life where your hands are too full to add one more thing to your calendar, take a note from my mom and plant some oregano. That's all you need to do to take the second step in your gardening journey. Herbs are hardy plants that tolerate minimal maintenance and flourish in small spaces with moderate sunlight. Since most herbs are grown for their leaves, you can harvest from your plants almost as soon as they start growing. Most herbs are cut and come again varieties, meaning the plants can be harvested from dozens of times. Many are perennials, so one plant will last a gardener for years. In fact, many herbs propagate so easily that one plant can turn into dozens of new plants. Did someone say free plants? To top it off, herbs are easy to harvest and use fresh, dried, and frozen, meaning gardeners can enjoy fresh harvests in the growing season and preserved harvests in winter. Herbs may be the most generous plants you'll meet. They let you take from them again and again, all while asking for so little in return. In other words, herbs are the perfect plant for a busy gardener. It's fitting that herbs are step 2, as we'll focus on 2 elements for each step in the process. 2 main types of herbs, annuals and perennials, otherwise known as soft and woody herbs. Annuals are planted from seed every year, and perennials either grow year-round in moderate climates or die and grow back from their roots in colder places. 2 places to grow herbs, indoors and out. 2 ways to cultivate herbs, by planting seeds or rooting cuttings. 2 ways to use herbs, fresh and dried. Before we dig deeper into all that, let's define herbs. An herb is any plant with parts, such as leaves, seeds, or flowers, used to flavor food or create medicine. That chamomile tea you're drinking, it's an herb. That peppermint essential oil, also an herb. Your sage sticks, herbs. Bouquet garni, literally a bunch of herbs. Pesto, chimichurri, tzatziki, sauces, all made with herbs. So why should step 2 be growing herbs? Most herbs can grow in a small footprint in your garden. They produce lots of leaves with just 4 hours of sunlight, and many are ready to harvest the minute you purchase or plant them. While sprouts and microgreens are the perfect plants for step 1 because of their small space needs, herbs are ideal for step 2 because they almost take care of themselves. We grow most herbs for their foliage, and since leaves are one of the first things a plant produces, this means you'll be reaping bigger harvests sooner and more often when you grow herbs. Sounds and smells so good, right? Some herbs are grown specifically for their flowers, such as Echinacea, Calendula, Chamomile, and Marigold. We'll touch a bit on flowering herbs in step 2, but our primary focus is on the leaves because A, leaves are the simplest thing to grow, and B, once you've successfully grown an herb's leaves, you're well on your way to getting the flowers too. Plant families. Our common household herbs belong to less than 10 families in the plant kingdom, but more than 90% of these delicious edibles are found in just one plant family. Anybody want to guess? We've talked about it quite a lot. It can be very problematic upon times.
Weeds?
It's a specific herb family. My guess is mint. Let's see.
I thought it was basil.
Well, I think that Tammy, nope, we're both right. Ah, how funny. Lamiaceae, and I know I pronounced that horribly. This is the biggest family of herbs you'll be growing in your garden, often called the mint family. It includes common herbs used in everyday cooking: rosemary, lavender, oregano, basil, thyme, sage, winter savory, and, of course, mint. Most mint family plants are perennials and classified as woody herbs. They sprout and grow all through the warmest part of the year, produce flowers, slow their growth at the end of the season, and when frost or snow comes, die back. Once spring arrives and the weather warms, these herbs pop back up from the roots, just like my oregano did that second summer in Virginia. Basil is an exception. It's an annual. Unlike its perennial cousins, basil grows and produces flowers in one growing season. Inside these blossoms are hundreds of seeds. If you let the herb flower and drop seeds, new basil plants will sprout the following year. Within this family, thyme and oregano are often the easiest to grow and cultivate throughout the year, whereas sage and rosemary can be more temperamental. Basil is the easiest to start from seed. Plants in the Lamiaceae family are remarkable in many ways. For one, you can cut from these plants again and again, and this continuous harvest only spurs the plants to grow more. If you grow nothing else in your garden but these herbs, you'll still have so much to pick and enjoy. For the next family, you have Asteraceae. Another great plant family to grow is the aster, one of the largest plant families on the planet. Asters are also known as the daisy or lettuce family. You'll see this family again in step 3. Herbs in this family are grown mostly for their flowers. What sets the aster family apart is their formation of beautiful clusters of little flowers at the end of their plant life. The first herb you might grow from this family is stevia, a natural sweetener for use in tea or lemonade. Chamomile and Echinacea are familiar. Asteraceae herbs that are great for making fresh or dried teas. Calendula can also be grown to produce teas, tinctures, and infused oils. If you're more of a coffee drinker, the ground roasted roots of chicory can serve as a coffee substitute, while its leaves can be added to salads. And I do believe that dandelion roots can be used in the same way. Let's just check really quickly. Are dandelion roots?
Isn't that for coffee? Dandelion
I
roots?
think so. Yes, dandelion roots are roasted and ground to make a popular caffeine-free coffee substitute. So that's 2 there, right? What was it that she was talking about? Chicory, I believe. Yes, chicory and dandelion roots. Yarrow produces gorgeous flowers ideal for making dried wreaths and bouquets. Marigold flowers are both edible and often used for medicinal purposes. Feverfew, marigold's cousin, was traditionally used to treat headaches and fevers. The name fits. Dandelions are found in this plant family too, and its leaves are known to aid with digestion, and they're also powerhouses of nutrients. dandelion leaves are very, very good for you. The first leaves of the year are the least bitter and the most pleasant to eat as a fresh salad. The older they get, the more likely it'll be better to pick the leaves and dry them, and then you powder them, and you can add it to any kind of food that has a strong, savory flavor. The Aster family, with its gorgeous flowers, makes a fantastic addition to your garden, and the herbs are useful in so many ways in the kitchen. While you can use many of the flowers from these plants, the leaves are often edible and full of flavor as well. The Apiaceae, also known as the carrot or parsley family, this group is best known for its namesake, the carrot. The Apiaceae family includes common kitchen herbs like cilantro, dill, and parsley, along with fennel and cumin. If you think of this group as the carrot family, you're halfway to understanding the growth habits of these herbs. So what do you think that means? Any thought?
Can you repeat it one more time?
Yep.
Sorry.
Not a problem at all. Okay. If you think of this group as the carrot family, you're halfway to understanding the growth habits of these herbs.
So they grow on the ground?
Right? You think of the roots of a carrot, right? So kind of maybe a thick tuberous style of root. Any other thoughts? Think about if you've ever seen a carrot go to seed, how it looks like a dill plant. Have you ever grown a dill plant, right? They have that feathery, seedy kind of flower structure, usually more small, yellow and green type of flowers. And so with the carrot, you're going to be gathering the root. With the dill and cilantro and parsley, you're going to be gathering different things, right? So the cilantro and parsley are primarily for their leaves, though if you get cilantro seeds, they're called coriander. Okay, and then dill is the leafy feathery structure. That's what you use when you make like pickles. Okay, so that's how you can think about the plants, the way that they're going to grow. Fennel, if you've ever seen fennel, it has that big, fat, white, almost onion-like root at the bottom of it, right? It's the licorice flavored herb. I can't stand it, but that's what it looks like. And then you also have cumin, and I have no idea what cumin looks like growing. I've never grown cumin, so that's going to be an interesting one. I love cumin. Very, very moderate, even to conservative use of cumin. If you think of, let's just go ahead and read that again. If you think of this group as the carrot family, you're halfway to understanding the growth habits of these herbs, including their weather, temperature, and soil preferences. So do any of you remember what time or temperature style of growth carrots prefer?
What do they prefer? Like, as you're talking about, like weather-wise, or
Yeah.
how they? Well, they're obviously a winter plant, right?
For
like,
you, yeah, cool weather, cool weather.
cold.
You don't really
They're
hit cold, so fair enough.
So yeah, and the way you plant them, it's not like you kind of have to go like not above the soil a little bit, but the way you have to do it, it's different than planting. I don't know, like with turnips. I don't know if you plant turnips the
Oh
same
yeah,
way.
I have not turnips specifically, but I'm guessing they're quite large comparatively. A carrot is more like a lettuce seed. They're a lot harder to plant. They're tiny.
Yeah, well, turnips look like carrots. They're like long, and they grow in the
Yeah,
ground just
they
like
do. Yeah,
yeah.
parsnips
So
too, right?
yeah, parsnips. Yeah. So yeah, just the weather for sure, and like you have to kind of like put hay or like not hay over it, then like put like a board or something over there because they get like I don't know. You were talking about it maybe a couple weeks ago about this carrot thing, so I'm kind of remembering what you were talking about when you were reading something about it. I'm not quite sure what class it was about. But no, you were mentioning something about carrots about a couple weeks ago, and I remember you saying something how you had to
Like they can maybe
plant
blow
them.
away or wash away really easily, perhaps.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Like you just gotta make sure like you kind of have to cover them. It's just like a little bit more different than versus like planting like lettuce or anything like that. So
Lettuce
it's
is really tiny like that too, though.
Yeah, they're kind of like those they're like cumin seeds. They're like
Hmm.
little seeds that don't even look like seeds. They just kind of
Yeah.
look like dill.
And so my guess would be that you put that there so that the water and the wind and the animals don't really disturb the soil until they've had enough time to kind of establish
Yeah,
themselves
that's
in
what it
the soil.
is because they're like they'll like fly around. They're
Yeah,
that type.
that makes sense. Absolutely. Okay. And so, including their weather, temperature, and soil preferences. Picture a carrot's root system. Most Apiaceae herbs have a similar taproot of some size. The longer these herbs remain in the garden, the bigger their taproots can grow. I've harvested parsley that had been in the ground for a year and a half, and the root structure was nearly 12 inches long. Herbs in this family are primarily the annual type, growing from seed to seed in one season. The one exception is parsley, which is a biennial and will, with optimal weather conditions, remain in the garden for 2 years before producing seeds. Lauraceae. The laurel family includes bay laurel as well as avocado and cinnamon plants. Bay laurel provides a deep, savory flavor to culinary dishes that can't be found in other herbs. Laurel is a perennial herb that grows much like a bush or a tree. Depending on where you live, you might be able to enjoy this as an ornamental bush in your landscape. Amaryllidaceae. Called the Amaryllis or Allium family for short, this group covers all things onion. Onion sets grown just for greens, plus shallots, leeks, and chives. You know, those potent flavors, usually grown as bulbs underground, that are the essential start to so many culinary dishes. I'm not sure everyone considers chives an herb, but when I think about the foods that maximize flavor in the kitchen, chives and green onions are high on my list. That's enough for me to include them in step 2. You'll learn how to grow onions and garlic in step 5 when we explore bulbs. All right, and then we'll go into setup for those guys next week. The last little thing here, herb families at a glance. Family, Amaryllidaceae, common plants, onions, chives, garlic. Oh, well, onion chives, garlic chives, right? She doesn't count the onions and things in the garlic in this. That'll be in the bulb step. So onion chives, garlic chives. Apiaceae, cilantro, dill, fennel, and parsley. Asteraceae, chamomile, calendula, echinacea, and marigold. Lamiaceae, basil, marjoram, mint, oregano, rosemary, sage, and thyme. Lauraceae, bay laurel. All right. Very, very interesting. Well, I always feel like I learn at least a little something. How about you guys? What did you find interesting from tonight that you didn't already know of?
The sprouts, I didn't know they were so fiber and nutritious.
Right? It's good to know that they're so packed with fiber because, you could do some damage to yourself even if you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, right? Anyone else? Any thoughts? Something that they didn't already know?
Well, I didn't know cilantro was in the family.
Okay, that you didn't know that like dill and parsley were right there with the cilantro. Parsley is actually when you go into the grocery store, you will sometimes see Italian parsley, and it actually is even closer to cilantro. So it's kind of interesting. If you ever kind of check out the 3 parsley, Italian parsley, and cilantro, you'll feel it. You'll understand it right there. Like you can taste it with the 3 of those herbs in a row, right? Just taste a few leaves from each one, and you'll definitely taste the distinctness. I would start with the regular parsley, then try the Italian parsley, then the cilantro. That I think would be the most distinct manner to try them in because the cilantro is just so strong, it's going to overtake the other 2, right? And then when you go from the parsley through Italian parsley to cilantro, you'll really taste both the cilantro and the parsley and the Italian parsley, but it's very much more mild, right? And then, of course, you get to cilantro, and by that time, you'll even be able to identify just a hint of what that Italian parsley and the parsley have in the cilantro that you would never probably have noticed before, right? We don't eat much parsley in our family. We're cilantro kind of people, right? But I had the opportunity, we accidentally bought Italian parsley once and it ended up working. And then I accidentally bought parsley once because they look very, very similar. The leaf structures are very similar. Parsleys are more rounded and cilantro is more, I wouldn't say ragged, but they're more sharp edged in their leaves. And so a little more feathery looking as well. And
Yeah.
then, just go ahead.
Yeah, we use a lot of cilantro, like
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to the foods.
Oh yeah, it's yummy. It's one of my favorites, right? But then we eat a lot of Mexican food, and that is a part of my husband's heritage. So that definitely is a lot of cilantro, a lot of green onions, refried beans, right? I'd like to grow some of all of it. Interesting. Let me see if I can find this for you guys. I want to say it's in my garden planner, my like folder, not the one we're working on together as a community. Yes, it is right here. And it's back when we were looking at all those different types of specifically structured salad beds. You guys remember that? Like the stir fry garden. I kept those because I thought that's a really neat way to put together a little garden. And one of them was a salsa garden. Yeah, two of them actually. There's a 2x8 salsa garden. And I think a little bit larger one is what it is. Oh, no, that's the larger one. So a salsa garden 2x8 and a salsa garden 2x4. And I just, that sounds so yummy to me, right? So eventually I would love to do some things like that and try to figure out how to incorporate that circle pattern that we've talked about that Gardenery uses rather than the square foot method, right? Because let's face it, plants don't really grow in a square, but they do grow in a circular fashion, right? They have that balance. Think of a tree, a truly healthy tree, even conifer like spruce. While it's that cone shape, it's still circular. Their plants are naturally a more circular shaping. And so those circles are very much more usable. And that's where you get that living mulch, not the direct on the soil living mulch, which is one kind, but the canopy that is your garden up to the vining plants that produce a higher level and perhaps even some small or medium trees within that for a full canopy, right? But a canopy begins with the micronutrients, the fungi, and all of that that's actually in the soil up to the truly ground covering plants into your highest trees, right? That's all a part of your canopy. And so, yes, no matter how high you take your garden, that's your garden's canopy. And so we're looking at the canopy covering the ground so that if we're looking down on it, if we're a little bug crawling around, we can see the ground under the plants. But if we're a person looking down on it, once the plants have really fleshed out a little bit, not their fullness, but say they're past their baby stage and they're well into their, and I can't think, if we're talking in animals, their adolescent stage, right? So they're well into their adolescent stage, maybe not all the way through it, but it's going to start covering the ground with those leaves and the plant structures. And when we do it with that circle pattern, that's where you want to see how large a plant is that you're going to let it become, right? Because as we've talked about with things like tomato plants and the cucumber plants, it's not always best to let them just go crazy. You want to snip back, especially the tomato plant, because it's going to spend more time on creating new leaves and things like that, more stems, if you don't nip that in the bud instead of the fruit that you want to concentrate on, right? So just all some different fun thoughts, and we probably ought to hop into Collectively Rewilding and check out our calendar. Super excellent class tonight. I think that it was some really good reading, right? We're dependent on the articles and the pieces that we read out of the books to determine how much information we're intaking. It's not really based on what we think or what we say on someone else's thought process. And I think that tonight's article and the section of the book that we read, they were just a little bit more interesting than some of the others. They really kind of sparked more discussion and presented questions that I felt like we've really studied here in our groups. So a lot of fun. All right, guys. Tomorrow we will jump into the Plan Your Wild workshop at 4:00 p.m. Pacific, 5:00 p.m. Mountain, 6:00 p.m. Central, and 7:00 p.m. Eastern. And we will tear through whatever we kind of feel like. I definitely have things that we've been doing over here I want to talk to you guys about. We can look into the week for December, see where everything's at. I think we've been really kind of discussing that and focusing on that really well. So those of you who haven't quite taken the plunge and you want to, this is a really good time to get those microgreens and or sprouts started, right? Really simple. Just get a bulk bag, not that much investment, and get those powerhouses started in your kitchen windowsill or not in a dark cupboard. It doesn't matter, right? I like mine to be green. I think it's more appetizing, but I don't really care as long as it doesn't smell bad or look sickly. Sprouts sometimes are yellowed when you buy them, and that simply means that they were, well, microgreens, right? That means that they were grown in less sunlight. And here in Utah, we have quite a bit of variety with the sprouts and microgreens, but I do think that Nicole Burke is correct. It is just the sprouts. However, they're grown in those containers that are shipped out around the country, right? They're the little, like, I think maybe half pint size berry containers are about the size that you traditionally will get with sprouts, microgreens. And they always have that growing medium at the bottom, right? That weird, like, white material, if any of you guys are able to buy them at the store. And you just pull that off and use them. And so a lot of times they are not bright green. They are more yellow in color because they didn't get that huge amount of sunlight, like what we're able to do at home for our microgreens, and if we so choose, our sprouts. All right, guys, hope to see you all tomorrow, and I hope you all have a fantastic week. Please feel free to unmute and say good evening, everyone.
Buenas noches.
Thank
I'll see
you.
you all day tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, guys. See you, I'm sure, many times this week.